The Memory of Love. Chapter 23. Is it true, says the child Abbas, voice juddering as he bounces on the car's back seat, that the number of stars in the sky is infinite? From the driving seat, Kai glances back at him. Nobody knows how many stars are in the sky. Nobody knows where the universe ends. So, you could say there are an infinite number of stars in the sky. Yes. How many zeros does infinity have? A never-ending number. Never-ending, echoes Abbas, trying the words out for size, staring from the window as they pass a palm plantation. His eyes switch back and forth from one row to the next. He begins to experiment, closing one eye and then the other. Imagine you tried to drive to the ends of the earth, continues Kai. You'd be just go round and round. You'd never get to the end of your journey. Think of that as zeros. Silence for a while. Between the three of them, Adrian can almost hear the whirring cogs of the kid's imagination. His mind turns to the old man in the room at the hospital and his memories of the moonwalk. Adrian had been 10 when the moonwalk happened. He remembered being in his grandparents' house, sitting on the rug, watching the television across the expanse of the coffee table. His father's voice explaining what was happening, calling Adrian to sit by him. His father had been well then. When I was your age, says Adrian, then clears his throat. It has been a while since he spoke to a child. Kai has an easy way with Abbas, whom he treats as a smaller and more vulnerable version of himself. It's a matter of hitting the right note. I mean, my father once explained to me how to think of infinity, the only way you could keep the idea in your head. What did he say? Abbas comes to lean between the seats. He smells of lemons and soap. He told me to think of a big block of stone, 1,000 miles long, 1,000 miles high, and 1,000 miles wide. That's a huge block. A huge block, concurs Adrian. Okay, now imagine a tiny bird like a sparrow. What's a sparrow? Well, any tiny bird like that one. Adrian points at a movement between trees. Now imagine that bird lands on the rock once every 1,000 years. Every 1,000 years? Yes. And then imagine it wipes its beak once on one side and once on the other side. How long do you think it will take for the whole rock to be worn away? Abbas jumps up and down between the seats. A very, very long time. Yes, not quite infinity, but very close to. Yes, agrees Abbas. Only the bird would die first. Kai and Adrian laughed. The road takes a series of tight turns down through one small village and then another. Here the houses are tall, wooden with narrow windows and shingled roofs, different from the concrete houses of the city and the clay brick homes in the village, on the road out to Iliana's place. The first settlements, says Kai. There's a church too. It's worth seeing, but we'll have to come back another time. We have a long drive. The road dips down along the valley floor and rises again. Here the macadam has disappeared altogether, giving way to rough laterite and, in some places, huge moguls round which Kai steers the car. A 30-year-old yellow Mercedes he calls Old Faithful. A white Land Cruiser races past them, kicking up clouds of red dust, briefly wiping out all visibility. At such a moment, Adrian might have halted, but Kai drives on unperturbed. The side of the hill rises steeply on one side of them and falls away equally steeply on the other. Here and there, the smooth scars of landslides. On the far side, water pours from high up the hillside onto a slope of sheer, dark rock. Look, screams Abbas, an inch from Adrian's ear. Waterfall. Call that a waterfall? Says Kai. Wait until you see where we are going. How long will it take us to get there? About 3 hours. 3 hours? He flings himself back against the seat. Don't worry, it's worth it. It will get faster once we are on the main road. Do you want to get some cassava bread and fish at Waterloo? Yes, please. A bridge, the width of the car. The railings have fallen away, leaving the sides unguarded. Opposite an oncoming vehicle hovers at the entrance to the bridge, waiting for them to make the crossing. Adrian holds his breath as they do. They have now scattered the city entirely. It lies to the south of them, between the tail of the car and the Atlantic Ocean. Due north is Guinea. 300 kilometers as the crow flies, beyond Guinea, Mali, Mauritania, then sand, the Sahara. They pass a settlement of single-story houses, open scrub, a scattering of rusted equipment, and arrive at the junction for the main road. Here, the pace shifts, gears suddenly, vehicles sweep past, swerving, overtaking, sometimes stopping abruptly to allow a passenger to descend or pick up another. Kai is silent, giving his concentration to the road. Around the bend of the hill, the road narrows suddenly, encroached upon by a marketplace. Kai pulls over and lowers the window. He raises a hand and clicks his fingers. A woman approaches and lowers a tray from her head. She counts out 6 fish, golden and blackened. A dozen rounds of flat bread separates the fish and bread into portions and ladles a deep red sauce over each. Kai passes a portion to Adrian, to Abbas another. Adrian eats with his fingers. The fish is smoky and dry. The cassava bread plain and unsalted, reminding him of unleavened bread. By contrast, the sauce is rich, greasy, and savory. Kai starts the car and drives away, eating from his lips with one hand and steering with the other. The sauce stains the tips of Adrian's fingertips. Saffron. Up through the hills, trees closing in on either side of the road. The traffic is gone. The road is silent. The landscape blasted out. Rice fields, vegetable plots, and tree plantations are gradually replaced by an unwavering wall of elephant grass. There is the occasional broken down lorry, but little else. The interval between settlements widens. Children, seemingly frozen in a single moment in time, watch the passage of the vehicle. Once they pass what looks like a disused quarry, Abbas lowers the window and sticks his head out, opens and closes his mouth to make popping sounds, and occasionally shouts his name into the wind. Kai presses a cassette into the tape player. The speakers hiss, a drum beat and then another. Well, they tell me of a pie up in the sky, waiting for me when I die. But between the day you are born and when you die, they never seem to even hear your cry. Abbas draws his head back inside the car, stands up between the seats, steadying himself between headsets, and sings at the top of his voice. The harder they come, the harder they'll fall, one and all. Kai taps the steering wheel. Adrian remembers Kai playing the same tape in the evenings in the apartment during his illness. Another song follows. Abbas seems to know the words to each one. Kai leans across and flips open the glove compartment. Choose something. Adrian rummages through the space. Biros, latex gloves, matchsticks, cassettes. Next to him, Kai takes a corner, swerves suddenly, and comes to a halt. One of the rear windows, Adrian sees a minibus on its roof in the ditch. A knot of people are gathered in the road in front of them, a row of cloth-covered shapes. Kai has the door open. Hold on here a moment. He doesn't pause for an answer, but steps out of the car, slamming the door behind him. Wait for me, Abbas scrambles at the door handle. I'm coming too, but Kai is already 20 yards away. You know, I think we should wait here, says Adrian, like you were asked to. Abbas's head snaps round. He is still tugging at the door. Why? Well, I think they might need a doctor. They don't need us, either of us. You stay with me. Abbas peruses Adrian's face for a moment, considering his response. Adrian smiles. Abbas relaxes and lets go of the door. Okay then, he says. Behind the boy's head, Adrian can see Kai pauses and squats at each of the covered shapes. There follows a brief conversation with the people by the roadside. Kai walks back to the car and swings himself into his seat, turning down the volume of the music before they drive away. What happened to the Poda? Did it crash? Asks Abbas. Yes, says Kai. What happened to the people? Some of them are dead. The ones who are injured have been taken away. The accident was a little while ago. They are waiting for someone to collect the bodies. I want to see the dead people, shouts Abbas. Well, they didn't want to see you, replied Kai equably. Abbas squirms around on the back seat and stares at the wreck out of the back window as it recedes into the distance. They drive in silence for a while. After a few minutes, Kai turns the music up. He has moved on. It is their day out. Abbas too is soon humming along and pointing out of the window. Adrian tries to erase from his mind the image of the survivors standing waiting, the bulky lozenges besides them, like an orchestra of double bass players. Half an hour on, Kai turns off the highway onto a dirt road. They traverse a metal bridge high over a slow, wide river and pass through a town. From there, they continue east down a long, straight dirt track. Here, the landscape is different again, even less cultivated. There are scattered rings of black boulders that seem to absorb the sunlight, too starkly black in the dazzling day that Adrian finds it hard to focus upon them. A short series of hills juts out of the flat landscape to cast a shadow over the surrounding earth. They stop to stretch their legs. The men set off in opposite directions to urinate. Abbas follows Kai. The air is sweet and heavy. Adrian's clothes and skin are covered in a layer of dust. He shakes his head and dust falls from his cropped hair. The ground at his feet is cracked, and when he relieves his bladder, the liquid sends up a small spurt of dust and a white butterfly from the icebox in the boot. Kai fetches cold drinks, and the three drink them standing by the car. A man steps out of nowhere and exchanges greetings with Kai. His eyes flick over Adrian with interest. Though it is to Kai he addresses his words. From what Adrian can guess from the nods, the gestures, he is asking where they are going. Kai offers him the empty drink bottle and the man reaches out to accept it gravely. Again and again, his eyes slip back towards Adrian. In time, he moves on to from where Adrian cannot imagine. For on either side of them, The road reaches out for miles. It is 1 o'clock when they turn off. The road down and descending and increasing narrow and uneven track. The track is so overgrown that light is scarce. After 10 minutes, Kai pulls over and applies the handbrake. We'll walk from here. So they gather their things and set off. Kai in the lead, the cooler from the boot on his shoulder. Have I been here before? Asks Abbas. No, we used to come here before you were born. How come you never brought me? It was never possible, says Kai, shifting the weight of the cooler, waving off Adrian's offer of help. There was a lot of fighting around here. He turns to Adrian and points somewhere up into the trees ahead of them. There's a dam up there, a big hydroelectric project. Are we going to see the dam? Abbas asks. Not this time. Abbas runs up behind Kai and bats the small of Kai's back with his head. Kai catches hold of Abbas and swings him around with his free arm. They walk, play fighting as they go. Abbas head lowered like a small ram, Kai catching him, swinging him, never breaking his stride. The call of birds, footsteps on dry leaves, an occasional insect, nothing else. Sweat trickles down Adrian's back. How hot it is even in the shade. As he walks on, Adrian hears a rushing in the air. A white noise. Ahead of them, he can see light, muted by the leaves, transforming in the distance into pure pale, shimmering brilliance. They are by a river. He can see the reflection of the sun upon water. Beneath his feet, the way turns to rocks, and he picks his route over and between them. They follow the curve of the river. The noise fills Adrian's head. Kai turns and calls to him. Adrian can see Kai's mouth open and close, but hears nothing. He cups his ears. Kai points and Adrian stumbles towards him, his gaze following Kai's fingers. It is the height of a 3-story building. To Adrian, the breadth is as impressive as the depth, for it is some 50 yards wide, powerful, determined, inexorable, and the water is like a great herd of animals, plunging from a cliff of rock into the silent pool. They picnic on the rocks and then swim. Adrian feels the glow of the cool water enter him. The river is faster moving than it looks, and they give into the current, floating downstream on their backs and ending up in an eddy by the riverbank. They dry off in the sunlight. Adrian's skin feels clean and smells sweet and faintly brackish. Abbas plays with the empty beer bottles in a rock pool, half filling them with water and watching them bob on the surface. 2 boys appear with homemade fishing rods and come over to stare at Adrian. After a few minutes, Kai tells them to go away. They obey, wordlessly and without apparent resentment, and join Abbas at his rock pool later. When Adrian goes to relieve himself behind a bush, they will follow him and at his insistence depart, repeating his words between themselves. Bugger off, bugger off. Adrian watches Abbas sitting hunched over his knees, absorbed in the tiny underwater world of the rock pool, feels a surge of tenderness for him and says, "He's a lucky kid." Immediately he feels foolish. The absurdity of envying anybody here their luck, though somehow he does. But Kai merely replies, "Yes, I know. I was just like him." "In what way?" "We used to come here a lot. Actually, probably it was less than half a dozen times. But then in a kid's life, that's a tradition, right? 6 years, as much as you can remember. This one time we'd come after the rains. You should see how much water there is then. I tried to swim under the waterfall. I thought I'd find a secret cave. I nearly drowned. My mother gave me such a whipping." Adrian thinks of his own childhood. He would never have dared to do such a thing, not for the danger to himself, but for fear of disappointing his mother. He stands up. "Come on," he says, and plunges into the water. It is after 4 when Kai says, "We'd better be going. It's not a good idea to drive too much into the dark. There are some crazy drivers." They pack up and head back to the car. Kai reverses up the track. Old Faithful's engine whines. The tire spins on the gravel, but Kai doesn't stop until he finds a place to execute a tight 3-point turn. They pass through and over the same series of towns and bridges, this time with the sun on the other side of the road. The earth is redder now, the light softer. It fills Adrian with well-being. Now, after a week of illness, a week spent recovering, he feels ready to get back to work. An hour and a half into the journey, they make a detour into a town to find petrol. There is a queue. The petrol pump is hand-operated and slow. So while Kai waits, Adrian allows a bus to lead him towards a stall selling cassettes, where 4 speakers relay music so loudly it is distorted. Unperturbed, the boy peruses cassettes. Adrian moves away from the noise to a distance where he can still keep an eye on a bus. Around him are stalls displaying trainers, plastic kerosene containers, hats. On the far side of the square, a taxi pulls over. The driver takes his face from the passenger and opens the boot, releasing 3 handsome deep brown goats. The ground is dusty and strewn with paper, like a fairground at the end of the evening. He recalls his father in the nursing home towards the end. Adrian had taken Kate with him on the visit, and they had stopped at a funfair on the way. The lights, the cool October air, the noise. By contrast, the atmosphere inside the nursing home, overheated, static, hushed. They had stayed for an hour, during which Adrian had been unable to work out truly whether his father remembered any of the events Adrian described, or even knew who he was. At the end of the visit, he had turned at the door to say goodbye, and the old man had raised his hand, fingers closed around his palm, and held up a wavering thumb. At first, Adrian hadn't understood, and then he had seen it, the thumbs up sign. It had once been their job. There was a country somewhere in the world where the thumbs up was the equivalent of the V sign. Where was that? Thailand, Iran? He'd read about it and told his father. Later, his father had performed the gesture emphatically behind the back of a priggish waiter. By then, the disease had already begun to strip his brain of cells, though none of them knew it yet. Adrian giggled into his cork glass. Watched by the stallholder, Abbas is lingering over the cassettes in the manner of all small boys with no money of their own. Adrian decides to leave it a few minutes before he offers to buy one for him. Meanwhile, he surveys the marketplace. He has no real idea of where they are. 50 yards away, a woman and a young girl leave one of the stalls and turn in his direction. The woman is tiny, the size of the girl. She is wearing a piece of light-colored cloth wound around her body and over her head. The girl is wearing a cotton blouse and a denim skirt. Adrian watches them idly. The heat, the exertion of swimming, the beer, the recent illness have slowed him. Only when they are 20 yards from him does the realization begin to trickle through his brain like a cold oil. The woman with the girl, the woman with the cloth covering her head, framing her face. It is Agnes. Quickly he turns on his heel and returns to Abbas. Tell your uncle I'll be 2 minutes. He holds up 2 fingers. Abbas stares at him uncomprehendingly, his hands closed around a cassette. 2 minutes, Adrian turns to the stallholder, who inclines his head slowly in assent, satisfied. Adrian sets off, walking quickly ahead of him. He sees the 2 women turn down one of the streets off the square. He slows his walk and follows. From the end of the road, he watches them climb the steps up to a house. The house is identical to all the others on the street. Square, single story with a deep veranda at the front. A concrete balustrade stairs leading up from either side. On the veranda of the house, Agnes entered a man, dressed only in a pair of cotton trousers, sits up and old car seat. "Hello," says Adrian. "Hello," the man answers. "What can I do for you?" His English is excellent. If he is surprised to see Adrian, it does not show. Adrian gives his name, asks if the woman who came in is called Agnes. "She is Agnes, yes." The man rises and positions himself on the balustrade, the better to hear. It seems only now he is leaning over Adrian. He is handsome and smiling with even white teeth and heavy slanted cheekbones. His hair is knotted into short dreadlocks. "What is your business with her?" Adrian hesitates, unsure how to respond. He doesn't want to appear uncooperative. On the other hand, there is the matter of patient confidentiality. "I'm a doctor," he says. "Agnes is not sick," a statement. "Not exactly. I saw her some time ago. I just wanted to follow up. I didn't manage to see her before she was discharged." The man is watching him closely. The eyes never leave Adrian's face. His expression is indiscernible in the failing light. Adrian sees himself through the man's eyes. A strange white man from off the street. Perhaps he shouldn't have followed Agnes to her home. She had discharged herself. He just wants to talk to her. It will take 5 minutes. The man eases himself off the balustrade. "You are a doctor, you say?" He is still looking at Adrian. His speech is measured and deliberate, his manner unhurried. "That's correct. One moment, let me find her for you." He crosses to her door and enters the house, closing the door behind him. Adrian waits in the street. There are few passers-by. The day is over. In a short time it will be dark. Adrian hopes the young man is conveying the message accurately. For some reason, he hesitates to trust him entirely. Something in his manner, more curious about Adrian than concerned for Agnes. When, after several more minutes, the man doesn't return, Adrian starts tentatively up the stairs. If Agnes sees him, she recognizes him. He is sure. From behind him, a woman's voice. "Good evening." A young woman, a shallow round hernia covered with a cloth end, balanced on her head, dictates her straight posture, the gentle rhythm of her straps. She walks past Adrian and up the stairs. "Can I help you?" Adrian explains once again. He is a doctor, here to see Agnes. He saw her in the square as he was passing. He doesn't mean to alarm anybody over Agnes's health, just to help if he can. "Agnes is my mother." Naasu, Agnes had told him. She lived with her daughter and her son-in-law. That presumably was him. The young woman, who must be Naasu, listens without interruption. "I didn't know she had seen you, but if you can help her, it would be good. Let me go inside and find her." Adrian doesn't mention to the young woman that he has already spoken to her husband. She clearly has her mother's interest at heart. She sets the pannier down on the floor. "Please wait here. I'll bring her to you." Now Adrian is confident, clear thinking. He knows where she lives. He'll be able to follow up on her, even if it means driving out here once a week or so. There's a lot he could do, especially with her daughter's health. That will make a big difference. Somebody reliable. Maybe they could get to the root of the matter. Once he has that, there's a chance. Everything else can follow. The door opens and the daughter appears, accompanied by Agnes. She has removed the cloth with which she had covered her hair. She is wearing a long cotton batik dress and a pair of slippers. Behind both women comes the son-in-law. He crosses to sit on the balustrade at Adrian's right shoulder, sitting close and yet out of Adrian's view. Adrian tries not to be unsettled by the man's manner. What matters is Agnes. "Agnes," he smiles, "I'm very pleased to see you. I hope you don't mind me coming to your home. I saw you just now in the market." Agnes doesn't step forward or smiles, but stands, hands clapped in front of her. Adrian keeps talking. "I'm sorry, Agnes. I was ill when you were discharged. I had malaria, and then I want you to come back and see me. There are some things we can do. I think we can make some real progress. Will you do that? Will you come and see me? It would have been better to have this conversation alone. He thinks, aware he is floundering if he can just reach her. He waits for her response, but none comes. Perhaps she doesn't recognize him after all. Nasu turns to her mother and speaks to her loudly and in English, for Adrian's benefit, as though Agnes is there. Oh yeah, a doctor. He says you have seen him. He wants you to see him again. She continues to speak, this time more softly, and in another language. Agnes replies. There is an exchange of some sort. Adrian waits, looking from one to the other, listening intently to a conversation he cannot understand. He can sense the daughter's husband motionless at his back. The daughter looks back at Adrian and shrugs. She says she is better. She doesn't need to see you. If he is honest, he could have expected something of the sort. Shame attaches itself to these matters. To Agnes he says, Agnes, I really think it will be a good idea, just one session. Then to the daughter, if you can tell your mother just one session, perhaps if it came from her. The young woman nods rapidly, translates. She appears to be genuinely trying to help. Agnes is shaking her head, actually shaking her head. He is anxious now. Nasu turns to him, frowning. I'm telling her what you told me. She says no. She doesn't want to. If you can just make her understand, I can help her. Some of the things we talked about. He turns to Agnes, but she interrupts him, speaking quietly and clearly in English. I am better now. The problems are gone. Thank you, doctor. She turns and steps inside the house, her daughter at her elbow. Adrian remains where he is, standing on the veranda, utterly lost. Agnes's son-in-law walks him back to the petrol station. The chap is friendlier now, apologizing for Agnes, asking Adrian questions, whether he has visited the town before, questions about London. Adrian's responses are muted and automatic. He needs to get back to Kai and Abbas. He's thinking about the next step with Agnes. Even if she believes she's better, she isn't. She'll go wandering again before too long. Who knew what the projection of her illness might be, or what harm could come to her? Perhaps he could return with Salia. Salia would be able to cross the divide. The darkness has settled in now, and Adrian is forced to concentrate on placing his feet. There are no street lights. The road is uneven. They are taking a different route to the petrol station, he notices, one that passes through the streets around the square. His companion has stopped talking. He can no longer hear the other man's footfall. He stops and turns. The first blow pitches him forward. There follows the split-second delay before he realizes he has been hit. The hot cold flash, finally the pain, billowing through his body like ink in water. The blow to the back of his head is followed by a kick to the base of his spine, which forces the air out of his chest. A third blow lands on the back of his neck and his shoulders, something hard, wood or metal. Adrian's knees buckle. He staggers. His impulse is to run. He tries and fails. His legs give way. He'd like to call out, but his lungs are airless. His face hits the dirt. The dirt is soft and cool. Sharp kicks to his side. Please, no more pain. Adrian concentrates on trying to speak, to say something, but he can only gasp. He starts to crawl away, aware even in the moment of the indignity. He doesn't care. He thinks of internal damage, his kidneys, his liver. Maybe whoever it is intends to kill him. If only they would say what they want, he would give it to them. Nausea rises in the wake of the pain. His mouth fills with saliva. He wants to rage. Still on all four, he heaves dryly. The nausea overwhelms him. The last thing he sees before he blacks out is a street dog, watching from the side of the road. He is dreaming, swimming off a Norfolk beach when he was a child, except that there are black children fishing off the rocks. The dream has a soundtrack. The words of the song keep coming back to him. The harder they come, the harder they'll fall, one and all. He smiles in his sleep. It's funny. Now Kai is in the dream, talking to him. What's Kai doing here? He tries to answer, but his lips won't form the words. He can't speak. Adrian doesn't want Kai to go away. Only he's trapped on the other side of the dream.